Shalom Aleichem, Boker Tov. So, man, where to begin? There's so much thoughts to share. Recently, I got back in contact with my mother. It was really interesting. Hadn't spoken to her in a very long time, and that was on her. She was such a psycho bitch that she just cut me off because I posted things on Facebook that were offensive and made us look bad as a family and our reputation. The reason those things happened was because my schizophrenia was not only untreated and undiagnosed, thanks to my mother, who did not disclose the fact that we had a family history of schizophrenia, but also because the globalist, cannabis pushing, porn pushing, demographic shifting, immigration pushing, child raping, Epstein Island Jews are implementing this agenda that is driving an increase in such cannabis legalization adverse effects. And so they suppressed any sort of help, care, or treatment that would have prevented such unstable behavior expression on social media. But it was really interesting because after embracing the adversity and allowing it to make me stronger, like fire forging steel, I've gotten pretty apt at psychology. And so this recent reconnection with my mother, she told me, it's like you always said, sometimes you got to go somewhere else just to find yourself or something like that. And I thought I never told her that. One of the voices in her head is that of her runaway son, her long lost son. She hears my voice in her head, but it's not my voice. It's what she imagines to be my voice. And what she imagines, I would say, because we've had more than 20 years apart now. Yeah. Heavy stuff. But I had already embraced the possibility that she had died and engaged in emotional detachment. So I had no emotional response to if she died, if she's murdered, if she dies in a car accident, whatever. And that was not by choice. That's because she drove me away and pushed me away, which she couldn't help due to her condition. So, how is that relevant to today's topic? Yes, the social credit score. When I was in New Mexico last, they had accidentally cut me off disability. And this is an example of the downstream harms of drug legalization policy shifts and law enforcement policy shifts that are more, faggy and pussyfied and limp-wristed about drugs. I had moved from North Carolina, living on a boat in a dock, to Albuquerque, just to reconnect with family. And the house that I moved into, there was alcoholic natives were the landlords, and one of the roommates was a tweaker named Rory, something like that, white man. And he started stealing my mail, and one of the mail letters that he stole was Social Security saying we need to reassess you to make sure you still are disabled. And I didn't get that letter, so they cut me off disability. And instead of trying to get back on disability, I got a job. I said, fuck this. I can make it on my own. I don't need the government. I was very conservative at that time. Yeah. And the conservatism expression was, get a job, don't be a bum, don't be on welfare, which I agreed with. So I got a job, and the first job was a caregiver. The first client was faking arthritis to scam disability, and despite having disability and Section 8 housing, so his rent was only $200 a month, he still managed to get evicted for not paying his rent because he spent all his money, disability check, on alcohol and tobacco. He got like $700 a month and only had to pay $200 a month and still managed to not pay the rent. And the next client after that was Billy Brewster. Now, Billy Brewster in Bernalillo had shut down, this is a white guy, he had shut down his liver mixing heroin, methamphetamine, and cocaine, according to him. They helicoptered him to Aurora, Colorado, bumped him up on the transplant list, and gave him a new liver. Now, I think that's insane that they just fucked over a lot of good people to save the shitty junkie, who then went back to New Mexico and started killing his second liver, relapsing on heroin, cocaine, and methamphetamine, and marijuana was present. Sure enough, the gateway drug effect. This is a huge... There's so much evidence showing the harms of cannabis, legal or illegal, but the harms increase with legalization, and this is just one of countless examples of people who smoke weed and do harder drugs because the weed isn't enough. It's like they get the initial dopamine rush from their first marijuana hit, and then eventually they develop a tolerance. They need larger and larger amounts, greater and greater potencies, etc. And eventually that's not enough, and they move on to cocaine and heroin and methamphetamine and fucking fentanyl, etc. Right? I did have a thought about designing a dopamine regulation brain chip. That way it can monitor a baseline level of dopamine and maintain it, right? And so no matter how much weed or heroin or God knows what else these fucking junkies smoke, they never actually get high. Nanobots. I bet nanobots might be able to pull that off as well. With AI monitoring and maintaining the baseline level, of course. Anyway, so then Billy Brewster, when I worked with him, so he had a marijuana bong and then methamphetamine pipes and baggies with white powdery substance with a reddish tint and a pinkish tint. And I took photos of his meth pipes, his marijuana bong. Cannabis was still legal in New Mexico at that time. It's 2018. And I sent photos of the possession and paraphernalia to the company and the Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department. And nobody did anything. All the company said was, well, if he smokes meth, just go outside of the house until he's done smoking the drugs. What the fuck? And he had both of his hands and all of his toes. He had a girlfriend who was dying of liver failure from all the drugs. She didn't get a transplant the way he did, so she was jaundiced. She was orange-skinned, bloated belly, skinny little arms. And the sheriffs didn't do anything about this either, so... That's when I began to lose faith in the whole conservative thing and become disillusioned to the grift and the scam that is back the blue conservatives, right? And that's even relevant to current experiences, because when I saw the police interacting with the cannabis-induced psychotic homeless black man shouting at invisible people and, arguing with invisible people and shouting at the clouds and the sky and things like that, they vanished quickly and didn't arrest him or do anything about his public intoxication, psychosis from cannabis or his homelessness or anything. And so I thought, what if they saw me and they're like, oh no, there's that guy. He posts this stuff on the internet. And so they're like labeling me an anti-police liberal, even though I'm not a liberal. And I agree with fascism, which is an aggressive enforcement of the law. So if anything, I don't think the police... I think they're pussified. I don't think they have enough balls to fucking stop, the political corruption. Like, no cops are arresting or executing corrupt politicians that sell out to the cannabis industry and, all these other fucking companies with money that whore out our politicians as prostitutes. Yeah, the police aren't doing anything about that. They're not doing anything about the drugs. Like, they're a bunch of pussies. I don't think calling police pussies makes me a liberal. I think liberals see the pussified police as Nazis. It's fucking gay and retarded. I'm neither liberal or conservative. I'm objective and apolitical. Circumstantial observations don't generalize to law enforcement as a whole. But there is a distinct pattern amongst all of my experiences with law enforcement where they don't do shit about drugs. But they'll fucking get really aggressive when it comes to hate speech on the internet, which is really pussified, right? I think actions in real life are worse than fucking speech on the internet, but oy vey goyams. But they're not arresting any of the Epstein Island client list. Money owns the law. They're just thugs for the rich. And the rich want the poor to die and get all fucked up from weed and drugs and whatever. And be replaced by immigration. So the cops aren't stopping the mass immigration. America has the largest amount of immigrants in its history right now that should have been prevented by the government, which includes law enforcement and the military. It wasn't. Does that make me a liberal? Anyway, back to the point. So, after losing that job because, I refused to work with Billy Brewster and they didn't have any more clients for me at the home care providing company, I almost got another job working in a dementia unit of a rest home. And the background check excluded me from being hired. They were going to hire me. They paid me to get trained and everything. It was really cool. I was so excited to finally get a job without a degree in the mental health field. And they excluded me because of the attempted luring misdemeanor. And the beaner, right, I recognized my own ethnicity over the phone. He told me that he couldn't tell if it was a misdemeanor or a felony because it was held in a superior court. And I remember thinking, well, I'm not on any list, like the sex offender list, so obviously it wasn't a felony. You can use your own fucking brain to, put that together. And I told him that, I'm like, so you're telling me I can't get hired because you can't figure out if this is a misdemeanor or a felony? That's not even my fault. That's on you. You're the government. You're supposed to, I don't know, make a phone call, send an email, do something to figure out if this was or wasn't. He's like, well, we get over 60,000 fucking applications a day. So, Charlie, So this is these fucking retarded beaners that are running beaner government, right? The beaner hierarchy, the beanarchy. This is the kind of fucking retardation that fails to get me hired. My own ethnicity, my own race, because Mexicans are shitty, right? If they weren't shitty, I'd still have my left hand and all of my feet and had a job and a career 20 years ago. I would have gone to university when I was 18 or even before 18 because my IQ and my test scores did qualify me for those grants and early admittance. But no. Charlie, expecting me to be competent and do a good job? That's like the Nazis, You're racist, You're fucking Hitler and the Nazis with the white supremacism. You're a brown white supremacist, Expecting me to fucking function just as good as white people? Shit. Charlie, right? But I also think, because I ended up contacting the Seattle courts where this all went, I mailed a letter to the judge in my case showing the evidence of my family history of schizophrenia and saying, well, clearly I electrocuted myself on Orcas Island. I self-inflicted 3 amputations, third-degree burns over 40% of my body, and a brain injury that remained undiagnosed for 13 fucking years after it happened. That's how shitty and horrible the white liberals were right in Seattle and the Mexicans in New Mexico. People are just shitty, stupid fucking assholes when it comes to this shit, right? So I get fucked because people are just shitty, stupid assholes. I think there's poo-poo people of color, the poop-colored people that work within the Seattle courts. And it's like a social credit score, right? Because I've posted anti-immigration sentiment and I've posted racist and sexist and homophobic, the hate speech online, they're less inclined to do what is right, which is simply to say, okay, look, clearly this wasn't this man's fault. This is objectively truth. Cannabis caused his schizophrenia, which caused him to electrocute himself. Anyone can fake mental illness, but you can't really fake self-inflicting 3 amputations with electricity. So clearly his schizophrenia defense is valid. Like, he's obviously not faking it. No. And so, we should, expunge this from his record or reverse the conviction or fucking whatever so he can get a fucking job because he's trying to get a fucking... Wouldn't the government want me to have a job so I could be off welfare and paying taxes? Like, no. You posted the fucking anti-immigrant posts and the anti-gay posts and the anti-colored posts. And so when you get these cuck-servatives who claim, China is communist and they have a social credit score. Yeah, I don't think I'm getting hired because of my internet content is offensive to, the faggot fucking white liberals and Jews that, control the masses through social media and basically manipulate society through technology. And I'm pretty sure, I'm just speculating here. I have no evidence for this, but I imagined this as the most likely explanation. The probability that some black woman saw these requests and saw my letter and just said, fuck no, not you. You be hating the black people and shit with the fucking, truth. Truth is racist. It's fucking wild. It's insane to me how corrupt and retarded and fucked up the government is in the name of diversity and inclusion and, all that shit. Equity, yeah. It's counterintuitive, it's counterproductive, it's fucking retarded. And it's outside of my locus of control, because you have the inner locus of control and the outer locus of control, right? What is within my control and what is outside of my control. I cannot control the moral decline and corruption of corporations, companies, and the government. And when I say that, I picture specific people, like the white liberal who interviewed me for the second most recent job that I applied for. I can't control his thoughts. I can try to influence them, but it seems like there's only one of two explanations. It's either incompetence or misconduct, right? So this guy who works in the mental health field put in the application how possession of marijuana is harmless and don't even bother putting that conviction on your background check. But he works in the mental health field, so he should know what cannabis-induced psychosis is, and he should know that cannabis-induced psychosis harms, like homelessness and mental illness in general, are increasing with cannabis legalization. So if he's just dumb and he can't draw those connections on his own, then it's incompetence. But if he's smart and he knows that shit's happening, and this is my experience with white liberals, like the white liberals of Ashon, it's the same thing. They know exactly what they're doing. They're lying. They'll pretend, they'll act like, it's empathy. Marijuana laws, you're racist. Yeah, they don't actually believe that. They might to a small degree, but really it's about money and power and these underlying agendas. So how they present on the surface is not what's going on inside their head. So what they say doesn't match what they do. If we pretend that marijuana laws are racist, well, I can simply cite the data showing that cannabis legalization has increased homicide victimization of black people and people of color, especially black on black homicides. Those have increased tremendously with cannabis legalization. In many cases, the black murderer of black people would have been arrested for cannabis possession, and that would have prevented the subsequent homicide. Once they stopped arresting people for marijuana, you started having more incidents like what happened in Shreveport, where the black guy smoked the weed and murdered 8 black kids. So if I'm to ask this white liberal, well, hey, look, this guy smoked weed and he's black and he murdered 8 black kids, so how is cannabis legalization helping black people? I experience this either the same cognitive dissonance from Christians when I ask them questions they can't answer, to where he does these weird mental gymnastics. Oh, well, that's just a rare thing, 1%, blah, 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 blah. Or I'll get more deception because he knows exactly what the fuck he's doing. He knows that marijuana is destructive and harmful, but it's profitable. So he's going to choose the money over the morality any day of the week, but he will mask his greed with altruism, just like politicians and the corporations that control them. There was something else, but I can't remember what it was. In summary, so it's insane to me that people are scapegoating all these different bullshit explanations for the harms caused by cannabis instead of simply blaming the cannabis. And so when they claim, oh, it's the black genetics, or it's, something else, it's this, it's that, it's blah, 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 blah. But the harms don't decrease. They're not prevented with these false, attributions, the fundamental false attribution error, right? Attributing causality wrongly instead of correctly. No, the harms are increasing because you're not addressing the cause honestly. And the same Epstein Island client list, right? The child raping Jewish pedophiles who are pushing marijuana, they suppress videos like mine and suppress me getting a job and things like that. I imagine, I speculate. But I think it's very likely. There seems to be a lot of signs of data manipulation that is impacting my life. And so the smartphone and, the internet, etc., exerts a degree of control and influence over me, which is insane. And I'm not the only one, obviously, but I saw a recent video where a mom in Fairfax County, Virginia, they voted about this homeschooling thing, and the public schools were going to implement gender studies into elementary school, excuse me. And the mom said, well, I am against it. They did a focus. All the parents were against it, but they're just going to ignore what the parents want and implement this agenda anyway, which means the government or the corporations that control the schooling and the government, they see parents as an obstruction to their agenda instead of partners in child raising. Yeah, that's been happening for years. What a stupid lady. When New Mexico legalized marijuana, there was more opposition than support, and the prostitute politicians purchased by the cannabis industry voted yes anyway. We don't live in a democracy. We haven't lived in a democracy for years. When gay marriage was legalized in California, the majority vote was no, and the Supreme Court just ignored the vote and implemented the agenda anyway.